Hello everyone and welcome back to another album review. In this video I'm going to review Sounds of the Unborn by Luca Yupanqui. This is a brand new release on Sacred Bones Records and I was actually kinda excited with this album in particular, mainly because of the very intriguing and unique concept behind this album and the way it was actually made, which makes it for a really unique experience. Like, I don't think I've ever found any other album that was made like this, and I don't even think that there's ever existed an album that was created the way this was done. So Luca Yupanqui is the newborn daughter of the two musicians by the names of Elizabeth Hart and Ivan Diasmate, who are actually the masterminds behind this concept and this really unique project, because this album was made before Luca Yupanqui was even born. The idea behind this album was to capture the sounds of a person inside the womb. Basically, this album was made with like biosonic MIDI technology, which was meant to capture the in utero movements and create them into forms of different sounds. This is by having MIDI devices hooked into Elizabeth's stomach and all of those just translating information and sounds just put into synthesizers. And this sounds like such a technologically advanced technique. Like, this type of concept was something that I didn't even know that was able to happen. Like, thinking about this and the whole process and how it was actually made, this whole concept just sounds absolutely insane. This by itself is enough to keep you intrigued and grab your attention. So the main question after this point is how well this concept is executed. Now, when it comes to this album musically, before I would listen to it, I would actually expect it to be much more chaotic and much more messy, which is not that much of the case. Now, of course, this album structurally can be all over the place because the baby inside the womb obviously cannot control its movements and just make some specific moves. So it would be obvious that we would get some sort of like free improvised elements out of this whole thing. However, the parents decided out of those lengthy segments to capture the emotions with some elements that would sound a bit more melodic, and they've actually really crafted an album that sounds more cohesive than expected. The album, when it comes to its sounds, can be all over the place, but they've made it in a way that it doesn't sound really as chaotic as I was expecting, and that is a good thing. I like that this album also has some more melodic passages to it. I like the way that they've crafted this whole thing, and you can definitely tell that they've put some work into all of this. However, at the end of the day, is this whole album really all that much worth it? Because if you take the concept out, what is this album in terms of its music? Well, unfortunately, I have to say that when it comes musically, this album is a pretty standard approach on like ambient electronic music. Musically, there is nothing really all that exciting or all that special about this album whatsoever. Sounds of the Unborn is one of those albums that has an amazing concept. It immediately grabs your attention, it immediately makes you intrigued, but in its execution it's more of an album that just sounds good on paper. And I was kinda worried that this might be the case because honestly I just love the idea behind this album and how just outlandish it sounds that we even have this type of technology, but at the end of the day the main focus is the music. And what's the point if the music by itself doesn't really do all that much for you? Because really, when it comes to the music, there is nothing to write home about. There is nothing special or intriguing about the music whatsoever. It's a really standard and basic electronic and ambient album. The synths and the sounds used for this project really sound outdated. At its best, this album can be quite ethereal and soothing, and also kinda dark at some points. But at its worst, this album is extremely forgettable. And this would actually become more of an issue the more I would listen to this album. When I came back to this album, I ended up feeling even more underwhelmed by the results. This might have been due to my excitement of listening to this album based on its concept alone, but listening to this album further and paying attention to the music, you would quickly realize that there is nothing all that worth mentioning. In my opinion, the album can be at its best when it has some of those glitchy portions with tracks like V2.2 for example, or with V4.1. In my opinion, this album becomes really underwhelming when it has some of its really outdated and basic synth portions like for example with the track V2.1, which is extremely underwhelming. But yeah, this album for the most part felt pretty boring, and it became even more boring with further listens. Even if we're talking about an album of a normal length, it's only 42 minutes, like there's not that much material to it. However, I don't feel that there is something all that engaging about this album for the most part. This for me is not an album that fails to reach expectations, as I was pretty unsure what kind of expectations I would have from an album like this. When it comes to the music, we're talking about a pretty average album made with some really advanced technological procedures, and that by itself is quite awesome. So for me, this album, it's worth giving it a shot, just out of curiosity, because I'm pretty sure most of you would be curious as of how this album would sound like considering its concept. But I'm pretty sure that most of you are not going to return to this album after one listen, because this really strong and unique concept is the only thing that is worth shouting out of this entire project. I'm going to give Shouts of the Unborn a 5 out of 10. What's your opinion on this album? Like it, dislike it, why, and what do you want me to review next time? Let me know down in the comments. If you like, if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.